I doubt if, Dr. Gateru, you're involved in this being a private university. But looking at the workload in universities, do you think from where you sit, probably you've worked in a public universities, there's a justification to this kind of civil action?
Well, I think there's several issues here. One is the remuneration of the lecturers and then the workload. From where I sit, indeed the workload in higher education has increased over the last few years. Looking at the demand that has been there, the massification of education. So you find where a lecturer was teaching maybe 4 classes a year. Right now they're having to do maybe 10 classes a year. In some universities that could go even much higher. So in my view, the lecturers have a case, but we need to look at it in the context of the larger remuneration structure in the country. Okay. And this could also be related to all the other actions that are happening. But for us as private universities, we are not affected in any way. We are running well. But we also, at the same time, empathize with our colleagues in higher education, both staff and students.
All right.
Yes.
And of course, you feel their pain, but do they consider the pain of the students and how the university calendar year is affected going forward?
That's a critical issue, really, because we have students who've paid fees and they are expecting to be taught. Not all students come from Nairobi. For example, if a student is studying in Nairobi, so there are costs involved. We've maintaining these students in the universities, and we've seen a few universities shut down. So to me, I think, not just with the lecturers, but as a country, we need to look at how do we negotiate? Okay. How do we discuss issues? Do we have to go to industrial action to resolve issues? Are there other ways that we can agree before we get to the level of industrial actions? And I believe if there's goodwill across the tables, we should be able to resolve most of these issues without having to go to the streets.
All right.
Yes.
And justifiably, do the lecturers have ground, for example, to tell their students that you don't have to go to the streets to get what you want?
That's a very good question, because if today I'm on the streets, and tomorrow my students are on the streets, is a very good question whether I have moral ground to tell them not to go to the streets.
Yes.
So we need to look at the whole issue of role modeling. And I'm looking at the current situation in Kenya, and I'm saying ourselves as intellectuals, the professionals, we need to show the way to the country. Whether it's lecturers, doctors, whoever it is, we really need to operate at a level where we are showing the way for all the citizens in the country. Because if, as professionals, we cannot negotiate and agree, what do we expect Wanjiku to do when they have a dispute?
All right.
That to me is really...
Let's talk about education, and especially in the universities, the higher education. Let's talk about the kind of graduates first we find this time. We have run a lot of stories in our media, on our air several times of graduates who are outside and they don't have jobs. One, the reason that has been given is perhaps they didn't do the right course. It's not marketable. Secondly, they can't simply find jobs. What do you teach these students? What do you tell them when you get out of here you do to get a job?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think the whole issue of a skills gap is very real, where you have students who are accused of not having the relevant skills. For me, the conception that we don't have jobs in Kenya, I would like to refute that a little bit. And what we teach the students, even at Triara University especially, is that yes, there may be no jobs in Kenya per se, formal jobs. But Kenya is a country that is full of opportunities. And the reason I say that is because Kenya has a lot of problems that we're facing across the country, be it security, poverty, all these issues. Wherever there's a challenge, that's an opportunity for a student to create a solution and make money and make a living out of it. So we train students to look beyond the formal employment 8 to 5. We are living in a country that has over 45 million people. What solutions are those people looking for? Can you provide those solutions? So the skills that the students need now are both for employment and also for self-employment and innovation. And that's what we really need.
Do we say survival also?
Well, survival, we have to survive. We have no choice. We have to survive.
So the skills also should help them survive.
The skills should help them survive. And the development of these skills is a responsibility of both the institutions, but also the student themselves. Because the student has a huge role to play in that journey. Because remember, the student is the one who is being transformed. They're in the university for only 4 years. But maybe they have 70 years after that outside the university. So we need to look at it within that context and see how do we get these students to be relevant beyond the next step after finishing their degree course.
All right.
And that's what we talk about, timelessness.
Timelessness.
Yes.
Before we talk about that, let's talk about students' new admissions getting to universities, and specifically, let's talk about RIARA here, for example.
Yeah.
I come to RIARA with the mindset, I want to be an architect, or I want to be a lawyer, or I want to be an accountant,
Yes.
so to say.
Yeah.
And along the way, I come to class and they don't like it. What happens to your students? If I come with my mindset, you help me pursue it, or you change my mind?
What we do, and we have some schools that have done it very, very well. And what we do is that we have a session with the students when they come in, and we have an interview with the students to really find out what is it that is interesting you to come to this program. Because you find in certain cases, it's the parent who has chosen the course for the student.
Okay.
Or the student has not thought about it, but half of his colleagues are doing the course, so they decide, I might as well do it.
Okay.
So we try to show the student that you need to look at the long-term career path that you want to take. So if we will help you along the career by having you move to another course where you have interest in, then we are able to do that. And we've had cases where we've even had to speak to parents and tell a father or a mother that this course that this student is taking is not the right one for them. And we don't want to keep a student, they earn a degree, and it has happened in many cases, even some places I've worked before, and the student takes the degree to the parent and says, there is your degree.
Now let me start mine.
Let me go and live my life. So we really don't want to do that because it's a waste of time for the student and also a waste of resources on the side of the parent.
How practical is this? Because one, we know most institutions, higher learning or otherwise, are commercially driven. What's their interest? Discouraging a student. And secondly, there are courses like anthropology, for example.
Yeah.
They're relevant in the market, and these institutions still offer them. So how do you balance your commercial interest with the student's interest?
I think we have to go back to ask ourselves, what's the objective of a university? If we get back to that level of asking, what's the objective of each institution? When I say that, I put it into context using the founders of RIARA, for example, Dr. Edgar Gashukia and Mr. Daniel Gashukia. These are two distinguished Kenyans who have worked for all their lives to support quality education. And they're not the only ones. There are other distinguished Kenyans who have contributed immensely to the development of quality education in Kenya. If we look at it from that perspective, are we doing what these founders of quality education in Kenya would have wished to see? Coming back closer to the question, yes, universities need to make ends meet. But if a university is established as a commercial institution, I can guarantee you that institution will not survive. If the focus is on the money, we need to ask ourselves, what role then does the university play in the larger market of a country like Kenya? And if the objective of an institution is to produce a workforce that will make an impact in society, that university will be in business.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because you speak to any organization, organizations are grappling with so many issues. Where are the universities? Society is grappling with so many issues. Where are the universities? So the universities need to look at not just the fees that the student pays, but what else can we do to, first of all, produce the right graduate. And if you're producing the right graduate, people will be willing to pay even a premium to come to your course.
Okay, because we've seen them, people pay a lot of money even to study outside the country.
Exactly.
So let's talk about the course. How do you then prepare these students to ensure that you are relevant not only when you leave, but long after you leave the university?
It's a mixture of several things. One is, of course, that entry into the university from the point of admission, the interviews, the preparation, the orientation, induction. That helps you to settle down into the environment of learning. And for example, at RIARA, what we do is we have flipped the classroom.
Okay.
So getting the student to be on the driving seat of their learning. Because the days of where a professor is the custodian of knowledge, those days are gone. Knowledge is available everywhere. So universities need to convert from being transmitters of knowledge to helping or facilitators of learning, to being facilitators of learning. So what we do is that now as the student comes in and as they take charge of the course for which they have selected, and as they take charge of the learning process, they start to realize that they have a lot of potential in them that may not have come out by just sitting and taking notes and regurgitating the notes in an exam. So the student starts to take ownership. So we also help the student to connect what they are learning with the real world through internships, apprenticeships, field trips, as well as community service, which is mandatory for students at RIARA University, to also give them that perspective of the society we live in. So it's not just the classroom experience. That is just a very small portion of it. But it's how do we develop what are called the soft skills around this student. Your communication, your confidence, your critical thinking skills, and those are the kind of skills. And that's what we try to do at RIARA.
Okay.
Yes.
And what is the level of your success and how much involved as a student? Because I'm looking at that where you're flipping the classes and you have the students taking the driver's seat, or so to say. How have you managed to do that?
Well, it starts with the orientation program, an induction program. There are schools or courses where on the first week, when you come in as a fresh student, you have an assignment to do.
First week?
First week.
You haven't attended no class?
No.
Okay.
And that gets a student to start thinking, hey, I have a stake in this. I need to play my role and my part in my success. So when the student now appreciates the fact that they need to take charge of their process, then it becomes very easy after that. So students will get notes in advance, they study in advance, so when it comes to class time, group discussions, presentations, the lecturer is just facilitating the process.
Okay.
But it's like a path of discovery for the students. And we believe that's how a student would learn better than just sitting taking notes.
All right.
Yeah.
So if you have a class next week, the students will this week receive the notes?
They'll receive the notes, they'll probably receive an assignment,
Okay.
and then they'll present it in class next